Well, welcome back to the full view here on SABC News. Now, former ANC MP Faiki Mentor will testify at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture in Parktown, Johannesburg. Tomorrow, Mentor shot to fame when she made a number of allegations, including that the Gupta family had offered her a cabinet post.
Mentor has made a number of astonishing allegations. These include the Gupta family offering her a cabinet post. They asked her to become Minister of Public Enterprise, provided that she drop the SAA flight route to India and give it to them. She said former President Jacob Zuma was in another room when she was offered the job. Earlier that week, allegations emerged that the Gupta family offered Deputy Finance Minister SABC Jonas 600 million to accept the Finance Minister post.
I'm looking forward in the sense that I fought for the commission to come into existence, and I'm excited that it is in place. However, I don't take my appearing before the commission lightly. It's nothing for one to beat their chest about or to pat themselves in the shoulder.
She also made shocking allegations that President Jacob Zuma spied for the apartheid government, saying she dared her detractors to prove her wrong. Mentor was an ANC Parliamentary Caucus chair from 2004 to 2008. She was deployed as a chair of the Public Enterprise portfolio until 2010, a position she was fired from after it emerged that she approached Transnet to pay for a trip to China, where the then President Jacob Zuma was on a state visit. But the presidency denied she was ever part of his official delegation at the time. She has embraced the commission as a success against corruption.
For me, I am anxious, much as I know my truth. I think because the commission is a serious business and because it's the last hope to retract the country from the mess, I'm happy that I'm able to play a role in that, but I am anxious because it's a tall order.
In Parliament, she always maintained that SOEs should be run in a proper manner.
Adamant that we should not micromanage ESCOM or any other entity or any department for that matter. The contracts, you see, once you sit down and you take a fine comb and you go through the contracts and you say, how much are these contracts, who got these contracts, that borders on micromanagement.
She says her testimony will be in 2 phases.
On Monday, I'll be talking about 1, 2, and 3 only of the terms of reference, which refers to the irregular appointment and removal of cabinet ministers. I am going to have a second testimony before the commission, probably early next year, about the contracts, the people, the networks, and the SOEs, and the illicit money laundering and stuff like that.
Mentor has taken to Facebook calling on people to watch the inquiry. Lehana Tsoteti, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, joining us in studio now is Analyst and SAFM anchor Stephen Grootes. Steve, nice to see you again.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. Look, quite a number of issues that we're going to touch on here today. First of all, quite interesting is the front page of the City Press. If that article is anything to go by, certainly insinuating that the state capture cases are in tatters.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of several dynamics here. I mean, one of them is they're obviously going after people who are currently in other countries, and this is always complicated. There's so much administration. You know, when it comes to extradition, for example, several countries have policies they will never extradite their own citizens. So Russia and France, you've got no chance. We're not dealing with that here, of course, but we are dealing with people who are Indian citizens, and they are in India or Dubai.
Yeah.
So if they're in India, you would probably have quite a lot of hoops to go through to get them out of India. If they're in Dubai, it's probably a little bit easier. Often these things really boil down to what kind of relationship do these two countries have. And I think we have a solid relationship with India. I think Dubai is maybe a little more complicated, but there are certain things Dubai probably wants and certain things that we probably want. And so there could probably be some kind of negotiation. It's not really negotiating for people, but
it's not really that easy though, Steve. And if you're looking for mutual legal assistance, how long would it take? It's very complicated if you're looking at Dubai and India as well. If what the City Press article says is true, that South Africa would seek that kind of assistance from those countries in order to perhaps get those implicated extradited to South Africa. It's not an easy task, is it?
No, but what is key to this, I think, is probably political will and making sure, and by political will, I mean on the part of the authorities here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Hawks have to do everything correctly. The NPA has to do everything correctly. And if there are any question marks there, the paperwork will come back and try again, please. And I think that's one of the problems. So, I mean, one of the claims made in that article is the idea that they were rushed by the head of the NPA, well, the former head of the NPA, Advocate Sean Abrahams. I mean, we don't know if that's true. Only a legal mind would be able to say that. I think it is probably possible to resurrect the cases, though, to get them out of the shambles. It really requires strong leadership and then getting everything together and hit the pause button for a little bit to make sure everything's done correctly. In a way, though, I think what's going to be more interesting, actually, is that while there are many people who want some sort of judicial sanction or judicial finding against all of the people implicated, the political implications of Mcebisi Jonas's evidence on Friday, the evidence he is still to give later, and Fakey Mentor tomorrow and other people, I think, is going to start becoming apparent quite quickly, and I think that's where the action's really going to be for the next little while.
Speaking of that testimony by Mcebisi Jonas, I think one of the highlights of that for many was what he said about not trusting the security agencies in South Africa. If we talk about the Hawks, I want to talk about the willingness, just getting back to this issue of the front page of the City Press. There's got to be enough willingness, I guess, on the part of the authority, which would be the Hawks in this case, and quite damning so, because what we've heard in Mcebisi Jonas' statement has cast a lot of doubt on the credibility of this all-important institution, has it not?
Well, we've all known, I mean, from the time that Mthandazo Beneng was appointed head of the Hawks, after a judge found that he had no integrity and was a liar. I mean, not before, after, which I've always felt was astounding, was one of the sort of real lowlights of the last 5 to 10 years. I think what we're seeing, though, is two things. One is political will on the part of the Hawks. You look at the current leadership of the Hawks, you'd expect there to be political will there. The second thing, though, is capacity. And over time, the capacity to examine financial fraud and financial crimes, which these essentially are, has become harder and harder. And it's really weakened in the Hawks. And, you know, time and time again, we've seen people getting off or investigations being stopped. The Commercial Crimes Unit, both at the Hawks and the NPA, person in charge of that is still Advocate Lawrence Mkhwebi. And so what we have are these, basically a lack of capacity. And it was an interesting sort of side note in the piece suggesting that actually they want the Commission to investigate that because they have more capacity. And that's entirely possible. That capacity can be restored. And obviously it's easier once you know what happened because the Commission will come to a determination on that to pursue that. And I think that capacity will come back. There are people in the country who can do it. Some of them will be in the private sector. But it is going to take time to do it. And so I think we're still a long way yet from serious action on this. The problem is that there's an election coming and there are a lot of people who want to see someone go down. And I think that's really going to be the fascinating. Is there going to be that someone before 2019 or not?
Well, certainly, I think that's a very interesting point to make because obviously you've got an election that is just on the doorstep. And obviously there are those in power who would want to be seen to be doing something and for somebody to take the fall for what has happened.
Well, people are looking for the first rays of sunlight in the new dawn, and this would be
it.
This would be part of it. So there's some signs of that already, I would argue, although a lot of people are still complaining about the clouds that obscure it. But I think that people are looking for action. There is this demand for action. The problem, of course, is if there's no action, it makes it very easy for the opposition parties to claim the ANC hasn't changed. And I think the ANC really, when you consider issues like Qadani Mahlangu, needs to show that it's actually changed. And if it doesn't, it does make itself vulnerable.
Speaking about the ANC in Gauteng, obviously calling for fresh elections in Tshwane and Joburg. We're looking at possible no motion of confidence in the Tshwane mayor for the 30th of August. What is going on? I mean, at the end of the day, you've got Julius Malema here, who has always campaigned against the ANC. Certainly unlikely that he will even go with the ANC this time around, and that would be, if I may, probably political suicide. Would the voters, his voters, even trust him if that had to ever happen? Would it ever happen?
Well, I mean, it's happened once before in 2000. You know, the Democratic Alliance was formed out of an alliance with the National Party, and the National Party then, Martinus van Schalkwyk, took his members out and went back to the ANC and got slaughtered in the next election. So you know, basically, I think that Julius Malema will know that history and know it well and be very worried about it. He did campaign absolutely against the ANC, and now to give a major city, the capital, to the ANC, I think would be a step too far. it would basically lead to questions about his character. You'd have to come up with a really good explanation that is believed by a large number of people. I was interested also in his statement last week that he won't have any meetings with anyone. Why? Really? Do we believe that? I don't know. Then the ANC's got another problem as well. If it were to actually govern in a coalition with Julius Malema, it's beholden to Julius Malema, and it's avoided that in Nelson Mandela Bay. At one point earlier this year,
one of the issues would be the land question.
Well, the land
How do you
question,
deal with that?
Yes. I mean, what happens if you then decide we're going to do this, we're going to change the constitution, and Julius Malema says, but I don't like the way you're doing it, I'm pulling out of Tshwane. What happens then? And I think the ANC is very aware of that, because he offered them Nelson Mandela Bay with the Patriotic Alliance and all the others, and they actually said no, because they were very aware. No one wants to, you don't want to be under Julius Malema's power, and I think certainly as the ANC, because the impression is that you already are in some ways, and I think that's one of the problems. There's one other point that I think is worth making. The ANC makes a lot about coalitions don't work. I didn't see it calling for a fresh election in Ekurhuleni.
Always great speaking to you. Stephen Grootes, analyst as well as SAFM anchor. Thank you very much for your time. Well, we always welcome your comments here on The Full View. You can post them to #FullView. You can also view any of our interviews and features by going to sabcnews.com, our Facebook page, and of course you can find us on Twitter. I think we're going to take a short break. Is that it? We'll take a short break here on The Full View. We're back straight after this.